Greetings shippers, welcome back, and it's time to take a look at a headcanon that has had a massive resurgence thanks to some in-canon support, or at least what many people are taking as canon support. It'll make sense in a minute. This headcanon has changed, moved, evolved, and it's all thanks to changes that have happened in the source material. We're going to be talking about the Superfamily, more specifically the Iron Dad trope, now known also as Iron Dad and Spider-Son. So if you're looking for it, look up both things. You're going to find different stuff. This is basically a world where an Iron Man is essentially Peter Parker's father, which is not to be confused of the shipping of these two, which is known as Starker. That's something we'll deal with another time. Now, we did a video on the Superfamily headcanon AU a while back, so check that out if you missed it and if you just want the reference for this video, because we're not going to go back over it too much. I'll of course leave the link down below, or you can click the card. Also, Infinity War spoilers, you've been warned. So, for this headcanon theater, let's dive into that world where Tony Stark is essentially Peter Parker's father. The Superfamily headcanon is a verse wherein Tony Stark and Steve Rogers are the parents of Peter Parker, oftentimes from infancy to his genesis as Spider-Man and beyond. The phenomenon emerged out of the comic verse, but fans were quick to utilize the film portrayals and other films to cobble together massive gift sets to blend this headcanon into the burgeoning MCU. Originally, these gifts would most frequently feature Andrew Garfield, although of course now they have come to include Tom Holland. However, since Spider-Man was not a member of the MCU at the time, the headcanon largely remained comic-related and was perpetuated by those who were already fans for the most part, and most of the connections to the movieverse had to be accomplished through AUs, particularly involving the domestic Avengers fanon. And indeed, in some circles, the enthusiasm for a movieverse tie-in had waned somewhat, as the stony aspect that accompanied the Superfamily was largely lacking in the canonical depiction of the two's relationship in the MCU, so that element had to be filled in via fanon, which not all fans were eager to do. However, all of that changed with the release of Captain America Civil War in 2016, when thanks to a deal brokered between Sony and Disney following the ill-timed, for Sony at least, Sony email leaks, Spider-Man was able to officially be part of the MCU, and with that came a whole new portrayal and all new headcanons. From the start, Peter was placed firmly in the Team Tony camp, a decision that given the relationship between the two in the Civil War comic event made sense, seeing as how during the event comic, Peter had in a sense been taken under Tony's wing, and did look up to him, his confidence in Tony being a major factor in why he decided to reveal his identity to the world, a decision that was quickly retconned. Unsurprising comic retcons aside, the MCU upped the mentorship level quite a bit, as this Spider-Man was significantly younger than Peter was in the comic Civil War arc, instead rebooting this Spider-Man back to high school. Ethical questions of recruiting a child to a massive superhero brawl aside, the film quickly established a for many endearing dynamic between the two characters. Tony is the simultaneously easygoing yet paradoxically overprotective mentor, and Peter is the eager to please, keen to prove himself, and seeking affection disciple. Following that film, the fandom exploded, with people seeking to expand upon this relationship and friendship, and a headcanon was produced that was later enthusiastically confirmed by Tom Holland, that of Peter Parker being the child that Tony saved in Iron Man 2. While some take it with a grain of salt, he did say that he got permission before giving away that information. And people were already drawing parallels between the characters, and not just from their comic origins. They saw similarities in how the characters were handled and presented in the MCU, both burdened by their responsibilities and with a penchant towards guilt, both science-driven and lovers of invention. And as the films went on, people even began to find parallel scenes and put them side by side to show these similarities, often with the caption, like father, like son. Suddenly, the Superfamily headcanon was galvanized once more, with many affix-it incorporating this new Spider-Man. And even older Superfamily fans were quick to work this new addition into their headcanons, while new fans, or simply those who were no longer pro-Steve, began to take the headcanon in different directions, with Iron Man taking on solo dad responsibilities, learning to be a parent or mentor to Peter. Sometimes it involved pairing Tony with Aunt May, sometimes it involved tragedy forcing him to adopt a now bereaved Peter, or it could be more lighthearted, with Peter as the linchpin that brought the whole team back together. For those who were not quite sold given how little interaction those two characters had in Civil War, Spider-Man Homecoming provided ample fodder, with Tony Stark playing a significant part in Peter's life and his growth as Spider-Man, and not just tech-wise. This film dove into the parental parallels head first, examining Peter's need for Tony's approval and Tony's struggle to both let him grow and protect him, on top of also still being at the same time arrogantly obtuse Tony Stark. While some rankled at how Happy and Tony treated Peter in the film, others were drawn into this headcanon even further, and it grew even more, as Iron Dad began to eclipse the Superfamily in the minds of some fans, given how much less prominent Steve was in Tony and Peter's story, especially as now the MCU has firmly established itself as its own canon. And while many do still draw upon the comics to help them inform their fandom, there are plenty who are willing to accept this universe on its own terms entirely, though there were/are some who will forever love the original Superfamily and find ways to make it work. In general, excitement grew in fandom, as in the lead up to Infinity War, fans saw Peter donning his iconic Iron Spider costume, a clear cue that the two's arc would continue to align, and fans eagerly awaited the next chapter. A chapter that, while it brought much sadness, also brought some new additions to this headcanon and some brilliant fix-its. Now, as mentioned, people take Iron Dad in a variety of directions, from Tony Stark being his biological father to Peter being the one to help Tony get back on his feet post the Avengers breakup. At its core is a love for these two characters who have so clearly developed a close bond and ability to bolster the other and see through the other's nonsense. For many, it feels very familial.
If you really cared, you would be here. I am here. I wanted you to be better.
And Tom Holland played that connection up to the max in his final ad-lib scene with Tony in Infinity War. On top of converting most everyone into being sold on how important these two's relationship is in the MCU, despite it being so new, the film also introduced a new player into this dynamic, forming a new superfamily for some, that being Tony Stark, Doctor Strange, and Peter Parker. While people had shipped Iron Strange, also known as Mystic Iron, before the MCU, and even before the two had met once Doctor Strange was added to that canon, Infinity War was a jumping on point for many shippers, and seeing the three characters interact together firmed up the dynamic for certain fans, especially as Strange takes the time to comment on the two's familial-esque relationship. Comedic or not, it got people thinking. And certain fans were already primed, given how Tom Holland and Benedict Cumberbatch were frequently interviewed together on the press tour, as external promotional material factors into how both ships and headcanons are born, especially in the MCU. Or at least it can be a factor for certain fans. Indeed, the Shuri and Peter ship was born out of a press interview. That is a tale for another video. As for Iron Dad, it is going strong, a headcanon that is in many ways largely supported by canon. In fact, for many, it has simply become an expansion of the existing canon. And despite the events of Infinity War, it is flourishing, for fans as ever live in hope and creativity. Indeed, it is at times like this that some of the most creative works are produced, which is not to say that everyone loves this headcanon. Some feel that Tony Stark would be / is already a terrible influence, and that Peter would be better off either idolizing someone else or working on his own, as some have never recovered from Tony first recruiting Peter into a dangerous battle, and later essentially ignoring him once he was done with him during Homecoming. If one is not a fan of Tony, this headcanon does become much less appealing. The same goes for those who are not fans of Holland's Parker portrayal. And this headcanon can be frustrating for some, as it can be difficult to find MCU-based Parker fics that separate the two, since within the canon their stories are so linked. Still, others enjoy seeing the rise of a Gen fandom phenomenon, as many fans, even shippers themselves, feel that fandom needs more Gen and platonic fics out there, and that there are many more stories to tell outside of romantic ones, which is part of why so many are troubled that this is also rising as a ship, even as this familial headcanon plays out. Thanks to separate names, it is possible to differentiate one from the other, most times, though it is possible to stumble down a path one does not want to if one is not careful about monitoring tags, or if the tagging is incorrect. However, we shall leave Starker for its own video. One thing is for certain, whether Iron Dad is part of the Superfamily or not, it is here to stay. Whether it will remain as popular as it is now has yet to be seen. However, it will forever exist as a moment in headcanon, fandom history. And who knows what the future has in store. So now, you guys tell me what you think. Get ready to answer questions. Do you like the Spider-Man, Iron Man / Tony Stark, Peter Parker dynamic in the MCU? Are you a supporter of the classic Superfamily, or are you here for the new Superfamily featuring Doctor Strange? Also, just in general, how many fix-its have you read since Infinity War? Let me know the answer to all of these questions, plus anything else you want to talk about, down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please follow me on social media to stay up to date. Subscribe if you haven't already, and please get belled so you never miss one of these videos. I'm uploading a lot more frequently. It's a thing. It was great to spend some time exploring fandom with you today, and now let's get to the outro. Bye-bye. This has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Special thanks to all of my patrons, names on the side. Let me know if there are any other headcanons, AUs, or just fun fandom stuff that you want me to cover. And of course, as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.